Hey guys, I'm going to go through the Guess My Rule activity on Desmos, right? So what this is doing is it's setting you up to get a better understanding of what a function is. So function always has an input and an output. And this rule is kind of used to demonstrate a function. But when we're using functions in algebra, we're going to be looking at equations. But let's just get started. So we're looking at rule number 1. It allows all integers as input, so any number can be put in as an input. And I'm going to see what happens. It goes in, and then out comes the output, which is 5. Right? So what could rule number 1 be? How would I be able to put in 15 and then get out 5? Well, I could divide 15 by 3. I could subtract 10 from 15, or I could take away the ones digit. If I divided by 2, then added 5, well, 15 divided by 2 is 7.5, and then adding another 5 would be 12.5, and that's not my output. So it's just one of those 3, right? Move this out of the way. Okay, so I said any one of those 3 rules were possible. So I'm going to enter a different input and see if that will help tell me what my rule is. So I'm going to put in 9. And if the rule is divide by 3, then my output should be 3. But it is not. And it's also not taking the ones digit, because if I just took the ones digit from 9, then the output would be 0. So, but my output was -1, so the rule has to be subtract 10. So that's my rule, right? Next, okay, now I have a new rule. All numbers can be put in as inputs. I'm going to test a few of them and see if I can figure out what my rule is. So all numbers, I'm going to put in 58. And out comes 7. Okay, I'm going to try another one. How about 63? And again, it's 7. How about 7? Still 7. What about 0? Still 7. So yeah, I think that the rule is going to be whatever I put in, my output's always going to be 7. If I input 6, I still think my output will be 7. Explain my thinking. Every output is 7. We'll go on. Now we're on rule 3. So this allows single words as inputs. I saw some of you guys put in like numbers or exclamation point or something like that, and you got an error message. That's because you're only allowed to put in single words. So they put in hello, and out comes P. Let's try another. Notebook. Try it. Out comes L. Let's try another. Popcorn. Try it. And I get O. So I think if I look at the last letter of every word I put in, that's going to give me a pretty good clue as to what my rule is. I'm going to try one more. Chair. Right. So if I put in friend, my predicted output would be E. It would be capital E. For wallet, I think the output would be U. And how am I figuring this out? I'm looking at the last letter of the word, and I think, and the output is going to be the next letter in the alphabet. So the last letter in the word is D. The next letter in the alphabet would be E. Last letter in the word is Y. My predicted output would be C. Let's try it. E-U-E-C. There we go. All right. Now we have rule number 4, where we use single letters as inputs. Single letters. So I put in A and I get out Alejandro. Try another. Let's try G. And I get Gabriela. Try another. Let's try F. And I get Fatima. Let's get M. Miriam. So it looks like I'm going to be given a name that starts with the letter that I put in. So if I put input A into this rule, explain what I think the output would be and why. I think the output would be a name starting with the letter A. Okay, now we're going to be talking about more of like the definition of a function. So it says that rules 1, 2, and 3 are called functions, but rule number 4 is not a function. So rule number 1, rule number 2, rule number 3 were the ones that we were looking at. And rule number 4 is not. So what I can see over here is that every number is going to give me a different number. In rule number 1, every input is going to give me a different output, right? And in rule number 2, every input gives me the same output. Rule number 3, every input again is mapped to just one output. But in number 4, if I put in H, I could get Haley or I could get Hamza. If I put in M, I could get May or I could get Madison. So I think a rule is a function if every output has a specific input. Is that it? I think so. So every input needs to be mapped to just one output. So 35 is mapped to 25, 723 is mapped to 713, -4 is mapped to -14. A function can have a repeating output, but it can't have repeating inputs. So a rule is a function when each input has only one output. However, one output can have multiple inputs. We'll talk about more, we'll get more into this in chapter 4. So this is really just an introduction into this. Okay. A function is a rule that assigns exactly one output to each possible input. So this table does not represent a function. And why doesn't it represent a function? Because 1 maps to 5, but then we also see 1 maps to 24. And 2 maps to 10, but then 2 also maps to 20. So there can only be one output for each possible input. We can't have one be mapped to both 5 and 24. it needs to be mapped to only 1. So we're going to change this so that the table does represent a function. So I'm going to let 1 map to 5. I'm going to let 2 map to 10. 3 can map to 15. Let's change this one. Let's change that to 4. And let's change this to 5. And now each input has its own output. So I changed the second 2 to 4 because 2 was already mapped to 10. And I changed the second 1 to 5 because 1 was already mapped to 5. Okay, and now let's look at this. Are these functions? So table A has different inputs and they're mapped to different dates. So these are astrological signs and they're mapped to different dates. So it's saying Taurus can be May 1st. Then it also says Taurus could be May 8th. And if you know about astrology, there's a whole month worth of dates that Taurus could be mapped to. But then if we look at table B, each specific date is matched to a astrological sign. I know that like difference is a little bit tricky to see, and again we'll keep looking more at it, but basically it's table A is not a function because there are multiple inputs that match to different outputs. Table B is a function because each day is going to have its own answer. Okay, so table B is a function. So table A maps several different outputs to one input. Table B maps specific outputs to each input. And that's that.